Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Joining me as always is Austin Davidson from Long Island, New York.
Heyo.
Today we're going to be recapping the wild card round, and it probably wasn't the best weekend of football to say the least, unless if you're a fan of the four teams that won, that being the Texans, Seahawks, Steelers, or Packers. They were all blowouts. Austin, you had a little fun fact here that last year all the road teams won on wild card weekend, and this year all the home teams won. So the first game of the weekend, Saturday at 4 p.m., was the Texans and Raiders, the toilet bowl, if you will. The Texans were an underwhelming 9-7 team with a great defense but a poor offensive attack, and the Raiders were missing their top two starting quarterbacks. Connor Cook made his first career start in the NFL playoffs, first quarterback to do that in the post-merger era. This game was pretty ugly to watch as expected, but not surprising nonetheless. Both teams struggled to move the ball consistently, as Connor Cook and Brock Osweiler both underwhelmed to a pretty serious degree. Both teams clearly expected the other to run the ball a lot, so they game planned to stop the run, both teams averaging around 3 yards per carry. The biggest difference, in my opinion, Austin, had to be at the quarterback position. Brock Osweiler, while not great, and maybe not even good in this game, didn't make any mistakes, or at least any crucial mistakes. He led 5 different scoring drives and didn't turn the ball over once, and was not sacked once either, outplaying his rookie counterpart, who only managed 2 scoring drives and threw 3 interceptions, one of which was an early one to Jadeveon Clowney, which set up the Texans' first score. And then the Texans went up 20-7 at halftime. You had a pretty good idea that the Raiders were not going to be able to come back. How was your predictions on both the score and your bold predictions for this game, Austin?
I just did bad on every single game this week. The fact that they were all blowouts really messed me up. Anyhow, I completely miscalled this game. I had the Raiders winning 21-20, and obviously they lost 27-14. Where if you kind of look at it, it's actually not that far off because it's only a touchdown away on both sides, but that's it. It's still the wrong team that won. So my proudest thing is that I called the Jadeveon Clowney's first career interception. When I was saying that he was going to get an interception, I wasn't aware that he didn't have one yet. So it made it cooler that I called his first one. But besides that, I got everything else wrong. I said Latavius Murray would have 85 yards and 2 touchdowns, and not even close in yards, and just only 1 touchdown. I also called the Connor Cook touchdown to Amari Cooper and 2 interceptions. He did throw a touchdown, but it was to Andre Holmes, and he actually did worse than I thought, and he threw 3 interceptions instead. And finally, I called Lamar Miller and Alfred Blue to combine for 2 touchdowns and 165 yards, and they only combined for 77 yards and 1 touchdown. And as I said, not my best day predictions. How are your predictions?
Well, I was just about as close as you could be to Connor Cook's predictions. For whatever reason, I assumed a rookie quarterback making his first start would not go well, as was the case. Cook was sacked 5. I predicted he would get sacked 5 times and throw 3 picks. He did throw the 3 picks, but was only sacked 3 times, so it was pretty close on that. I predicted Jadeveon Clowney would get 3 sacks, but he actually only had 1 tackle, and the interception was really the only notable thing he did all day. Lamar Miller was another one that I missed. I had him finishing at 175 scrimmage yards, which was 102 yards short of where he actually finished. He had no receiving yards at all and only managed 73 tough yards on the ground. And I was somewhat close on the final score prediction. I had the Texans winning this one by a score of 24-10, when in reality they won 27-14. What were your thoughts about this game, Austin?
This game was about as exciting as I thought it would be, and that being said, it wasn't very exciting and or fun to watch. As you said, it was mostly the toilet bowl. Both offense struggled in a game where it felt like any other playoff team could mop the floor with these teams. I think the Dolphins could have made it through this round. I think just anyone. I think the Lions could have made it through this round. Obviously, that would make no sense because they're an NFC team, but both these teams are bad, and it's really just a shame that Derek Carr got injured this year. The Raiders could have done so much better, as Cook did terribly in his NFL debut, and I would have felt so much greater about maybe Derek Carr having to move on and verse the Patriots, because I think they would have had a chance to take him down. It's just sad that he's not there. What did you think about the game?
Well, if Derek Carr is healthy, they probably have the number 2 seed. They probably don't even end up giving it up to the Chiefs in the first place, if you want to think about that. But this game is kind of what we all thought it was going to be, maybe a little more competitive. I was correct in assuming the Raiders simply don't have enough depth around them right now to make up for the injuries for the players at key positions. None more obvious than Derek Carr, the MVP candidate, or a deserving MVP candidate. The Texans have a really good defense, statistically the number 1 defense in the NFL, that can give any team headaches when they want. But the fact of the matter is Brock Osweiler isn't going to win many games as a quarterback for an NFL team. They got lucky this week facing a third-string quarterback making his NFL debut in a team that's banged up around him. They're not going to have that same luck this week. And the reality is when you're going into New England, you need to be at your best and not making any mistakes to beat them. And I certainly don't think that Brock Osweiler is capable of doing that. There was kind of a quarterback controversy the last few weeks of the season. Do you think Brock Osweiler earned the start against the Patriots this week? And since it's about as obvious as it could be, the Patriots we think are going to win this game, how much do you think they're going to lose it by?
Well, I'm going to say no, Brock Osweiler didn't, because I think Brock Osweiler has had good games in the past, but, he doesn't shine constantly. He has one good day out of, 7. So I think it's still you go with Tom Savage here, because Tom Savage has shown that he's decent all the time. You know what you're getting. You're not getting an amazing player in Tom Savage, of course, but you're getting a player that is going to be consistent and not going to be just awful sometimes, completely missing reads and such. Where Brock Osweiler, you might get a good Brock Osweiler once in a blue moon, which happened against the Raiders, who have a really poor defense. But I don't see that happening. I would preferably go with Tom Savage, but I think the Texans are actually going to go with Brock Osweiler. And in terms of how much they're going to lose by, that's a difficult question, because with Jacoby Brissett, I believe, it might have been Jimmy Garoppolo, but I can't remember which one was starting at the time.
It was Brissett.
It was Brissett? Okay. They 28-0'd them. They made sure they ruined them. So this time with Tom Brady, I don't want to call over 30, but it's just, how could you lose to a Jacoby Brissett-led Patriots by that much? I'm gonna go with they're gonna lose by 27. I'm gonna say they're gonna lose by 27. I know it's weird to call that a Tom Brady team is gonna do worse, but I just don't think the Texans can be that bad twice in a row to get skunked. I think they're gonna put some points up. I think the Patriots are gonna get into the 30s, but I think the Texans are gonna put at least 30 points up. What do you think?
Well, I suppose so that Osweiler earned the start this week only by virtue of winning a playoff game, and I don't think it makes sense for a coach to pull a starting quarterback after you win a playoff game. I haven't seen enough of Tom Savage at this level to know if he's much better than Brock Osweiler. I saw him a lot at the University of Pittsburgh, and I liked him then, but obviously the college game is a lot different than the pros. The thing I have to say about Brock Osweiler is that I've never been a big fan of his, but he didn't turn the ball over and he played a relatively clean game this past week, even if it came against a below-average defense. I don't think he could play clean football against a much better team in New England and the number 1 scoring defense there too. I think they can hang close with the Pats in the first half just because of the defense alone, but I think they lose by at least 20 points, and that's generous considering what happened. Granted, it was back in week 4, but still, I just think the Texans are overmatched, at least when it comes to their offense versus the Patriots defense. Moving on to the second game, I was really off on this one, but the Seattle Seahawks defeated the Detroit Lions 26-6. In this game, it was a relatively close, tough defensive battle throughout the first half, but the Seattle Seahawks had a clear advantage in one area, and that was in the running game. Thomas Rawls had a fantastic game, and he broke through for the Seahawks, who just overmatched the Lions in every facet on the defensive side of the ball. Matthew Stafford clearly couldn't do what he was used to, and someone who joined me, Will Lester, on our show earlier, had a brief interview with him talking about the NFC playoffs, and I got his thoughts on the both the wild card games and the Odell Beckham Jr. situation. Here's what he had to say about the Seahawks-Lions game. Starting with the game on Saturday, what did the Seahawks show you in this win, and what did the Lions show you, on the other hand, in this loss?
Well, for me, first off, as a Lions fan, they showed me they have a lot of work to do. They have talent, they can win, but it especially showed in this past Saturday's game that there's a lot of room to develop. Receivers have to grow a little more mentally, and I think we have a really young offensive line that's only a few years away from really stepping it up. Essentially, what really did them in this entire football game was their own mental error and the fact that they could not stop Thomas Rawls from running the ball. I mean, you're not going to beat the Seahawks if you let them run the table on a guy that wasn't even their leading rusher all year long. So I think Seattle just showed perseverance. They stuck with the run, and it paid off. Eventually, they managed to put up more points as it goes, and they were counting on the Lions to make mistakes, and that's exactly what happened. And it ultimately paid the price for Detroit.
So, Austin, after hearing that, what were your thoughts about the game, and how were your predictions for this game?
My predictions, I just continued to do rather poorly, but I will take a victory here for score-wise. I pat myself on the back. I think I called it close enough where I could be happy saying the Seahawks would win 21-6. Obviously, they won 26-6. So I accurately got the Lions score as I expected. I didn't expect them to do anything on offense. And I was only 5 points off in total, that means, so I take a victory there. I said Russell Wilson would throw 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. 2 of the touchdowns going to Jimmy Graham and 1 to Doug Baldwin. And he ended up only throwing 2 touchdowns, with 1 going to Doug Baldwin and the other to Paul Richardson. He didn't throw an interception, though, so I guess I called that, but it's not really the full prediction. Moving on, I called a 100-yard game for Jimmy Graham, and I was wrong. He only got 37 yards. And finally, I called 9 sacks for the game in total, and there was only 6, 3 for each team. And I think I called 5 for the Lions and 4 for the Seahawks. So I was off. How were your predictions for this game?
I missed about as badly as you possibly could have in this game. The only thing that I got correct is that Thomas Rawls would score a rushing touchdown, which he did. But I was wrong in the fact that I thought he would only manage 80 yards, and he managed over 100 yards. And he did not fumble. Matthew Stafford, on the other hand, didn't get close to the 325 I predicted, and just barely cracked 200 and had no TDs. And oh yeah, the Lions lost by 20 points when I thought they would win 21-17. Clearly, when I predicted this game, I was hoping that it was going to be a lot more exciting, and I really didn't even factor the fact that the Seahawks were playing at home, where they're a much better team, the 12th man and whatnot. As I mentioned earlier, this was a close game early on. Both teams struggling to move the ball at times, but it was clear that the injury to Matthew Stafford's finger was affecting his ability to throw the ball down the field. The Seahawks seemed to know this, and they were ready, and they just played to take the running game away, and they couldn't move the ball at all. Eventually, Seattle's offense wore down the Lions' front, and Thomas Rawls had a fantastic game as they imposed their will on the Lions, and it was a pretty dominating win for the Seahawks. What were your thoughts about this game, Austin?
Yeah, it was just another unexciting blowout, except this one I expected, so it didn't really come as a surprise. I was more surprised that 50% of people, at least according to Twitter, had the Lions winning. I mean, I know the Seahawks aren't great, but the Lions have just been bad, and that surprised me. I thought the Seahawks were going to be a majority. I guess their bandwagoners are all kind of leaving now. I don't know. I guess they're all Cowboys fans now. Anyhow, I liked what I saw out of Rawls. He allowed Russell Wilson to kind of relax, just sort of like Le'Veon let Ben just relax and watch. Russell Wilson wasn't challenged at all on the day, really, and the Lions' defense cracked against an offensive line that it was one of the worst offensive lines in the league. And the Lions offense didn't get anything done either to help out the defense, because the defense was playing well, but, I mean, eventually it cracked. It's just you can't hold up forever. And also, this could have been the breakout game for second-year wide receiver Paul Richardson, who had a couple of spectacular catches, including one for a touchdown, it was argued because the refs missed a face mask call, but it's still probably the catch of the year, even though it should have been offsetting penalties, because there's pass interference on the play, and then the face mask should have been called. Regardless, it's not anything we're not used to with the Seahawks. The Seahawks, I don't know why, always get the refs on their side. If you watch a Seahawks game this year, you just see that the refs kind of just give them calls that are just not right. I'm going off on a tangent here, but I kind of want to talk about this. The Seahawks didn't get a roughing the kicker penalty against Dan Carpenter when Richard Sherman went for his leg and took him out. They didn't get the pass interference against Julio Jones when Richard Sherman obviously pulled back his arm, and it would have won the Falcons the game the first time. And then, obviously, they just ignored the face mask call on Paul Richardson, which would have took back the touchdown. I mean, it would have still been first down, but it's a little ridiculous. When you watch the refs in the Seahawks games, I don't know why it's like that, but it just is. But we're going to move on from there. You had a question asking, are the Lions ever going to win a playoff game, and are the Seahawks for real?
Well, unlike Will, I don't share his optimism that the Lions are up and coming that much like he thinks they are. The way I see it in the next few years, unless if Aaron Rodgers has like a season-ending injury or for whatever reason just falls off for his level of play, I don't see them winning the division or making the playoffs in a position where they could win. As far as the Seahawks go, they are definitely better than what I thought a week ago. As obviously I was wrong on just about every prediction, but I'm still not ready to believe in them yet. If they can manage to go into Atlanta and beat the Falcons in the Georgia Dome this weekend and shut down Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, I'll be ready to buy into them, but I still don't think they'll be able to win this week on the road, but who knows? I was wrong about last week, so I definitely could be wrong about this game too. Moving on to the final non-Steeler game of the weekend, it was the Packers and Giants in Green Bay. The Packers won this one also in a pretty comfortable fashion, 38-13. Early in the game, the Giants missed on several opportunities, including a drop touchdown by Odell Beckham Jr. in the end zone. Beckham dropped 2 passes in the day, along with Sterling Shepard, who dropped a pair as well, including one for a touchdown. That, in addition to what also could be considered questionable decisions to punt in Green Bay territory instead of attempting a long field goal or going for it, is something that's going to be debated all offseason for Giants fans. But eventually, even a talented defense like the New York Giants had could not stop the machine that is Aaron Rodgers right now. Rodgers had a slow start but finished with 362 yards and 4 TDs in frigid conditions, including parts of this game without his top receiver, Jordy Nelson, who was questionable to play with a rib injury. Eventually, Rodgers just figured out a way to expose the Giants' defense and made them pay for not finding the end zone early on when they had the chance. The Packers eventually ran away with this game late. Will Lester also had some thoughts on this game. Here's what he had to say about the Giants and Packers game. What did you see from the Packers that you liked, and on the other hand, what did you see from the Giants that you didn't like?
Well, for the Packers, it starts with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, the guy, you can't give him all day to play. The guy's going to show up, and especially as hot as he's been lately. The Giants had every ability to put that game in a position for them to win, and early going, they just couldn't get it in the end zone. Obviously, you have the drops with Odell Beckham and Sterling Shepard, but I also look at the 2 or 3 opportunities they had where they were in Packer territory and they decided to punt the ball. You get later on, you realize you're not scoring a whole lot. You need to take some of these opportunities and start going for it, because you're not going to hold Aaron Rodgers to nothing all game long, is it? He's just too hot of a quarterback right now, and eventually, near the end of the second quarter, he showed that. He came through, they scored on a drive, and then the Giants were, like the Lions, doomed by their own mistakes. You had, obviously, the Hail Mary that was poorly defended, and then in the second half with the Bobby Rainey kick return that he decided to catch and take out at the 4 rather than let go out of bounds. Mental mistakes ultimately did them in, and I think it was also a little bit of poor play calling, So, the Packers definitely just outsmarted them and outlasted them.
All right. So, Austin, how are your predictions for this game?
I was devastatingly wrong here. This was bad. For score, I had the Giants winning 34-31. And boy, was I wrong with the Packers blowing the Giants out 38-13. Secondly, this is just really bad. I called OBJ having a big game. I'm not even going to talk about what I called because it was so off. And this might have been the worst game of his career, at least one of them since he's been a rookie, or since his rookie year rather. I called 2 interceptions for Clinton-Dix, and he didn't get one. And then finally I called Eli to throw for 400 yards, and he only threw for 299. And I called Rodgers to throw for 325, and he threw for 362. So kind of close on the Aaron Rodgers yards, but it still wasn't close enough in my book to count as, yay, I did well. Just bad predictions. How about your predictions?
Well, as far as the score goes, I was about a touchdown off for each. I had the Packers getting 31 points and the Giants getting 21. The Packers finished with 38, so I was 7 points off there. And 8 points off the Giants' final score of 13. So I was somewhat close on both sides, but it was more lopsided than what I thought it was going to be. I was pretty much on the money for Aaron Rodgers. I had him throwing for 4 touchdowns, which is what he did, and over 300 yards, which is what he ended up doing. I didn't have really a specific bold prediction, which is something I really should be doing. I just said that Eli Manning was going to play well, which at times was the case in this game. The Giants' offense really was not good at all. And to be fair, he was probably the best player on the offense all day. He finished with 299 yards, like you said, a touchdown and an interception, but he really didn't get much help from his receivers either. Already mentioned Beckham Jr.'s drops as well as Sterling Shepard's drops, so they didn't have much of a running game either. So as far as that goes, I was probably kind of hit and miss there. Austin, the Packers are going into Dallas next week, and it feels a lot like we're watching this Packers team make a run kind of like they did in the 2011 playoffs. What do you think about what you saw on Sunday?
Aaron Rodgers might actually do it. I didn't trust him when he first said it, but he may actually run the table. I'm just shocked that the Packers secondary was able to keep up the Giants receivers in check. Like, it just doesn't make sense. But, I mean, I guess they shot themselves in the foot because they did have drops mostly on their own, but it still doesn't make sense to me. It feels like Aaron Rodgers has superpowers of some kind. I don't trust him. I really hope that he doesn't make the Super Bowl, because that is not something I want to see. Actually, if the Steelers don't make the Super Bowl, I hope so, because I think they could easily take down the Patriots with how they're playing as of recently, or the Chiefs. But it's just, I don't trust that man. That man has superpowers. What did you think of the game?
Even with the injury to Jordy Nelson, this team is scary, and it's resembling very much so the team that Rodgers led to a Super Bowl in the 2011 playoffs, like I was saying, except he's playing even better now than he was then. I mean, all you have to do is look at his numbers, and then at the same time, look at the guys he had now. In 2010 and 2011, he had a pretty good defense, and he had guys like Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings, Donald Driver. He had James Jones was the 4th receiver. They had Jermichael Finley, who was a Pro Bowler. But this time, the defense is just average and was missing key players in the secondary. Their main running back wears the number 88. They don't have a great tight end in Jared Cook, just a decent guy. They have a couple of solid receiving options, but nothing really incredible outside of Jordy Nelson. Yet they took apart the Giants' defense after being stifled early on. They managed to put up 38 points, and they didn't even play their best football early on. The rest of the league has been put on notice to his greatness, and they have to be scared to play Aaron Rodgers and the Packers at the same time. It really is unbelievable. Yes?
Oh, yeah. Before you move on, Ty Montgomery is actually probably out for the rest of the year. He just went down in the Packers-Giants game. He got hurt, and it looks like Christine Michael is going to be taking over as their main running back from now on.
That would be interesting if they played the Seahawks in the NFC Championship and you have Christine Michael, who finishes the Seattle Seahawks leading rusher this year despite being released at midseason. So that's another thing to watch out for. So that's another thing. Your starting running back is now someone who wasn't even on the team like 8 weeks ago. Moving on to the other locker room from that game, a lot was made about Odell Beckham Jr. and what happened both prior to the game on Sunday and after the game, before Beckham Jr. was spotted in Miami with, I don't know if it was with a lot of teammates or what was that whole situation, Austin?
He was just hanging out in Miami, partying on the yak. We don't even know if he was partying. We were just kind of hanging out. It was just a picture of him on the yak and some other Giants wide receivers, and that's really it. And people made a big deal about how he was in Miami right before a playoff game.
Well, anyways, his being in Miami 6 days before a playoff game garnered a lot of attention and a lot of questions during the week. And after the game, Beckham Jr. punched a wall in the Packers locker room, and that certainly caught a lot of people's attention. I asked Will Lester about his thoughts about what happened both before and after the game. Here's what he had to say. What were your thoughts on the Odell Beckham Jr. situation? Both what happened in the week leading up to the game and about how people seem to be making a big deal about his trip to Miami, and what happened after the game where he reportedly punched a wall in the locker room. What do you think about all that?
Well, the Giants have all the talent in the world, especially defensively. And when I see Odell Beckham, you see the face of the NFL. You know, a lot of people, you mentioned NFL, a lot of their first thought is Odell Beckham. And as far as the Miami thing, I don't think that has any correlation to his performance on the field on Sunday. However, I do feel like it was not a smart choice to go out there because it just created a distraction for the whole team. And you can't tell me that they had a harder time focusing on the game or on their preparation for the week because they're constantly being berated with questions about this really obscure and random trip to Miami on their day off. So, although obviously he had a couple of drop passes and his performance really wasn't up to snuff, I feel like he just needs to get himself in a better mental state to play the game on a week-to-week basis, especially in big-time games when he plays in the playoffs for the first time, or when you see him going up against big-time corners like Josh Norman. You kind of see he's easily to get under his skin. He just needs to grow up a little bit. I mean, the punching of the wall, come on, that's high school. You need to act like a professional. You know, you lost fair and square in that game. You have no one to blame but yourself for that poor performance. So I see no excuse for the punching of the wall. I don't feel sorry for him for getting berated for all these Miami questions, but I don't think it's related to his performance. I think everything put together, just mentally, he was not in the state of mind to perform at his top level there in the playoff game, especially against a tough team like the Packers. You got to be all there for that game.
All right, and everything from this interview can be found on SoundCloud and YouTube. Will and I also discussed the NFC divisional games as well as more news from the wild card games in the NFC. Like I said, you can check them out on SoundCloud and YouTube, the full-length interviews. So moving on, Austin, what do you have to say about the whole? I guess you touched on it a little bit, but the whole incident with the boat and then what happened in the locker room after the game.
See, I don't understand the boat narrative. Like, they're just people trying to live their lives. While their job might seem like the greatest job ever and they're being paid millions for it, it's still their job. Like, I work at a grocery store, and I'm not constantly studying the barcodes of things in the store. I have a life outside of work, and so do these people. They don't have to take work everywhere with them just because they are athletes that are put on spotlight. Like, it might be their job, but they don't have to take it everywhere. However, the wall incident is immature. People are saying that it's just a man that loves football and hates losing, and that is the worst excuse I've ever heard. I played football back in middle school. Keep in mind, we were 14 years old at this time, and that never happened. And we lost. We lost the seasons were like 6 games, so it was super short. We lost 2 games, and I was never punching a hole in the wall. No one on my team was punching a hole in the wall. And we love football just like everyone else. And we also hated losing. There's no one in the world that likes losing. Like, it's a stupid excuse to say, oh, he hates losing. Like, no, of course, we all do. And then just to make a comparison, when we would lose, we would be mad at ourselves, but then we would move on. We wouldn't just punch a wall and hit our heads. Like, it's just we're on to the next game, and we're children. Like, there is no justification for an adult to be punching a hole in the wall and hitting his head into lockers because he lost. Just end of story. Childish and immature, and he needs to grow up. What do you think?
Well, going back to the whole boat incident, it's just stupid in my opinion. It's something for people to talk about during the week when there's really nothing going on. It's a complete non-factor between what you do on a Monday afternoon in Miami and what you do 6 days later the following Sunday in Green Bay on a football field. Beckham Jr. said it himself that it has nothing to do with how he played in the game. As far as the hole in the wall goes, yeah, I get it. You're upset. A lot of people don't like to lose. In fact, nobody likes to lose. Who likes losing? I mean, seriously. But don't put yourself ahead of the team by becoming a distraction when you do something stupid like that. You know, you made the connection to you when you played football, and yeah, it was a sort of the same situation when I played. Granted, it's not the pros, but at the same time, when you're in the pros, you have to be held to a higher standard because you are an adult. Even if you are a young man like he is, I mean, we lost sectional football championships, and I watched the seniors who knew that they were never going to play football again, and none of them were angry like that and sort of released it in a temper tantrum like that. Sure, you're upset, but you'd be much better towards you'd be much better served putting that anger towards motivation for practicing better and preparing better for a game next year in this type of situation so that you'd be more ready for the postseason. It's time to grow up, young man. That's all I have to say about that. So as far as that goes, I think we're just about all set here, Austin. Is there anything else you wanted to throw in here before we wrap things up?
No. Actually, yeah, just one tiny thing, but you actually mentioned it in our Stronger Than Steel podcast. All of these games next week are going to be rematches from earlier on in the season. So all of them should be, I'm hoping that these ones are a little bit more interesting. I'm not expecting much out of the Texans-Patriots game, but all the other ones, like Chiefs-Steelers, Packers, Cowboys, and Seahawks-Falcons, they should be good. And I really am just hoping for the Falcons to exact revenge. That is my game of the week that I want to watch. I'm excited for.
Well, you're certainly not alone there. A lot of people agree with you. I do as well, and so does Will Lester. In fact, he'll be on our next episode previewing the divisional games, as his full interview also includes a discussion of the preview of those games, including what he believes will be the game of the week, which is that game between the I'm blanking on it. Was it the Packers and Cowboys?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So anyways, we're going to wrap things up here. If you have any questions about the show or you want to email us, get our feedback, or have anything you want to say to us, email us. Our email is strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. We post our episodes on SoundCloud first, limited supply of episodes there, and then we post our full library on YouTube, including special features. We are on Twitter and Facebook. Our handles are STS Podcast 1. And we tweet live during game days. If you want to follow Will Lester, check out his full interview, like I said, on SoundCloud or YouTube. He is capital W for Will, capital L Lester 94 on Twitter. So feel free to give him a follow too. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be back soon for our preview episode for the divisional round and for the Steelers preview against the Kansas City Chiefs. Have a good day, everybody.
Goodbye.